Be happy, happy.
Be happy.
Be happy, Mom. Be happy, Mommy.
Come on, keep your chin up.
Enjoy this time.
Smile.
Smile, smile, my darling. Blessings.
Welcome to Creative Mamas Unplugged. We are your hosts. I'm Cherice Barton.
And I'm Shelly Hutchinson. Creative Mamas Unplugged is a podcast where we navigate the hell out of being a creative mom with humor and heart.
We will have honest conversations,
Hear wise words from fellow badass mamas.
and share hilarious stories around motherhood for some much-needed comic relief. Listen, motherhood is the most creative, most difficult job in the world. You are not alone, and you deserve to be happy.
Cherice and I are so excited to bring you this conversation with the amazing educational technologist, author, and internet safety expert, Lori Getz, MA, who has spent 20 years helping families and communities navigate the ever-changing digital landscape. You've probably seen her on Today, Good Morning America, or sharing her wisdom on parenting and educational sites. She's also the author of the Tech Savvy User's Guide to the Digital World and Likeability, the Truth About Popularity. Lori brings so much insight and practical advice, and we hope it's as helpful for you as it was for us. Join us for this insightful chat with Lori Getz.
Listen, we all try and do way too much. And it's, I actually think technology plays a very big role in that. That and the fact that we live a whole lot longer than we used to. And so we have to make more money. And so the combination of all of it, we just do way too much.
Great point. You're absolutely right. We do. We try to pack it in.
I don't
Can
know.
I ask you how you think that technology plays a part in us overscheduling ourselves? And is it because we have access to quick scheduling?
We are constantly accessible. And so we have gotten into this, a technology for a lot of people has become kind of like an electronic leash. And it's really hard for them to not feel that pull. And so they think they have to be available for everything. So that's part of it. But the other part of it that I find really interesting is they've been talking a lot about banning cell phones in schools. And a lot of parents are saying, wait, but that's how I tell my child when I'm picking them up and where I'm picking them up and if somebody else needs to get them. And at first, the administration was kind of saying, just make the plan before you go. That's how we did it as kids. But the truth of it is, we've gotten used to a totally different system. We don't use the system. The system of today wasn't the system when we were kids because we have the technology. So I never worry about one of my kids getting lost and me not being able to find them. I don't worry about that anymore. I don't worry about, oh, if I'm 5 minutes late, she's going to be sitting on the front steps and she's going to be all alone and she's not going to know where I am. Like none of that exists. So that's why I think we do so much more because of just the way in which we can.
Lori, can I just say, and without wanting to sound too woo-woo, I truly believe that the universe has brought you to us. I mean, I'm serious. We have been speaking about this unbelievably important and, quite frankly, terrifying subject for such a long time. And, selfishly, as a mom who's in the thick of it with two tweens, I'm chomping at the bit to pick your brain. I read your book. I absolutely love it. I can't wait. It's going to be a holiday gift for my kids.
I don't know that they're going to consider it a gift, but thank you.
Well, yeah, it's a gift to me. Let's just say that. And it's so good. And yeah, so I'm so thrilled. I know Shelly is too. We've been talking about this forever. So we're really happy to have you here to help educate our listeners and us.
Thank you. I will say, I love that you're giving my book as a gift. I've received countless emails from kids who say, my parent made me read your book but then I actually liked it and thanks, or it was helpful, or I wish I could get my younger sister to read this or my older. It was really, so I get these really cool emails from kids and and I love it. I absolutely love it. But kids don't want to be told how to use their technology because they understand it so differently than we do, that's why I wrote the book the way I did, so that it wasn't a do's and don'ts. It was more, let me just explain how it all works so you can kind of decide what you want to do.
That's what's
I-
so
Yeah.
good.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Shel.
I was going to say, I love, because most of the time when you're talking about books, we talk about books on our pod all the time, that you're always being handed a book by a doctor or a specialist. There's a book for everything, right? And it's always for the parent. And I love that this is for the kids. And it feels like you have your finger on the pulse with this, which is like, this is one of those things that is kind of rare, that you see around parenting, which is like the kids actually know more than the parents. And you talk about how you want kids to teach their parents how to do this. And so it's kind of like you flipped the perspective a little bit. And I think that's what's so cool, is that it empowers kids to take charge in the right way. It's just a very interesting perspective. And I imagine, to your point of receiving emails, you're being heard by your target audience, teens and tweens, right? Is that the target?
It is absolutely. I think that, when I first wrote it, the target audience was kind of 11 to 15. But honestly, I really find that, and I originally wrote the book in 2016. And so then I did a second edition in 2019. I updated a little bit. But the truth is that at its core, it's exactly the same. I'm talking about privacy, personal safety, attention, dealing with drama, and health and wellness. Those are topics that really don't change. I mean, the apps might change. I think something you said, Shelly, really interesting is that there are very few places where the kids know more than the adults. To me, technology is like slang. They decide what's trending, not us. And so we are never going to be one step ahead of them. Even if we're very tech savvy, they use the technology differently than we do. And so that's why when I wrote the book, and just because kids are getting devices younger and younger now, I now find that it works really well for like 9 to 14. You can go a little bit younger with it, but it really was important to me that I explained this directly to the kids because listen, I'm a mom. I've got children. They don't want to hear anything I have to say about anything. They would much rather hear it from a total stranger than hear it from me. And so I know that this work allows me to often validate what parents are already saying, but be that other voice. And sometimes the parents don't know. And so then the kids get this really cool opportunity to say, hey, mom, dad, listen, this is how another adult explained it. Now maybe you can understand it because too often the adults say things that make absolutely no sense, right? Don't put your name, address, and phone number on the internet. That will keep you safe. That's nonsense. All of our information's already out there, and hopefully no scary boogeyman has knocked on your door yet. Parents say things like every predator online is, an adult man, and that's not true either. I see teen on teen predatory behavior. Another 11-year-old can do a lot of damage. So we're not necessarily messaging it quite right. So it makes it hard for the kids to understand, which is why I wrote the book the way I did.
It's so good. I mean, I have it right here. I love it how the first thing that we read is, okay, so someone got you to open this book. Maybe you were forced to read it, or maybe, just maybe, there are things that you don't know and want to understand. No matter how you got here, I'm glad you're here now. Let's get one thing straight. You're probably thinking that it's, quote, internet safety book, where I tell you things like, don't put your name, address, and phone number on the web. Never talk to strangers online. The internet is a dangerous place. While there is some truth to each of these statements, it is utter nonsense to believe that this is what internet safety is all about. And furthermore, if anyone was to tell me that by trying to hide my real life, so it's like exactly what you were saying. But I love that you say technology makes my life better. It makes things easier. It enhances my relationships with my friends, my family. And so you're like, you're just saying to them that knowledge is power. It's the internet is amazing. Technology is amazing. And I'm with you, kids. Like, yes, I love it. And I love it too that you say, I'm a gamer, I'm a texter, I'm a social media user, a follower, and a friend, and I post and I share and I comment and I like and I shop online. Like all of that is so great, because it's true. It is an amazing place. But as a parent, I shut down because I don't know what to say. And Shelly and I have said that too. We're like, how do we explain to our children how to navigate, the World Wide Web when we can't grasp it ourselves?
Right.
I mean, I barely know how a toaster works. And how am I going to explain the internet?
I think I might actually understand the internet better than how a toaster actually works, to tell you the truth. So, parents ask me this a lot. How do I get them to listen? How do I get them to understand? So a couple of things I want to say is that I honestly don't believe that my book, as much as I would like it to, I don't believe it's going to stop kids from doing dumb things online. I don't. But I do know, and what I have seen over and over again, is that when that they recognize that they've done a dumb thing, and oftentimes they will now tell their parent what has happened because they recognize that they made this mistake and the consequences might be larger than they were expecting. My main goal is to get kids to tell their parents the truth about what they are doing online, and the parents to lead with curiosity and not judgment, so that we can actually parent the same way online that we do in the real world. Right? That's really what it's about. But because we get so scared, because we do believe that every, you know, every stranger online is a 50-year-old pedophile that wants to do terrible things to kids, then we're not paying attention to when they're on roadblocks talking with another child that is actually grooming them to take naked photos of themselves. And I hate to say it, but I've seen this happen. So I want to I also want to kind of let parents off the hook a little bit. I think this is a big part of my message. I think it's really unfair that I think it's really unfair that parents are expected to catch things before it happens. And so therefore, if we didn't get all of the monitoring software right, if we didn't get all the filters right, if we didn't say all the right things and my kid did a dumb thing and now something bad has happened, I'm a terrible parent. And that's not true. That's just not true. I try and get parents to accept two truths. The first truth is that there is no such thing as full parental control. I mean, do you guys remember having toddlers and saying, "Oh, I'll never be that parent that, lets their toddler have a tantrum in a public place and give them a lollipop. I'm going to control my child." And then I'm the first person to hand that kid something to shut them up because it's embarrassing. So we we need to kind of recognize that a piece of software isn't going to do the parenting for us. We we can't just click a button. I mean, I wish I could use some sort of software to make my kids eat all their vegetables or go to bed on time or not argue with me about cleaning their rooms. Like that would all be amazing. But that's not how parenting works. And so I really want to try and get parents to understand that while using some of these filters, softwares, monitoring, I don't love monitoring software. But we can talk about that. I do like the filtering software. I do like time management kinds of things. I think that's really helpful. But I do need parents to understand that just by turning something on, it doesn't mean it's safe, right? It sets this false sense of security. And what parents really need to be doing is asking more questions and just kind of focusing on behavior, not necessarily the technology. So that's the first truth is getting them to kind of there's no such thing as full parental control. The second truth that I think is important, as I said it earlier, is the fact that they're always going to know more about it than we do because they use it differently than we do. And that's something we have to accept so that we can start to recognize we need to talk to them and have them teach us the things we should know.
You said so many profound things, and I'm stuck back at the first thing you said, which is like it's unfair to ask parents to catch things before. That's a really beautiful statement, actually, because I think as parents and as moms, especially, we're responsible for so much, but we really do. We want to kind of nip things in the bud, and we want to make sure that we're always on it. We're on the case at all times. So I love that you said that, not as a way to say like, okay, hands off, but you kind of are, right? Saying like, you don't have to be in control of every single thing. Ask more questions.
Yeah. Pay attention to the behavior. Listen, I'm all for actually holding off as long as you possibly can. I actually do believe in kind of that idea. There's a whole movement of wait till eighth. I don't know that we have to wait until eighth grade to give them a mobile device, but I do think that waiting as long as we can is a good idea so that we can build as many healthy habits before we introduce the technology that makes those habits kind of difficult to stick with, getting to bed on time, making eye contact, not just scrolling and getting lost in it, all of these kinds of things. But I also really like the learner's permit situation. That's what I call it. I was teaching one of my kids to drive as I was teaching another one to text. And it kind of was happening at similar times. And I realized, listen, I'm sitting next to my 15-and-a-half-year-old because while she absolutely understands the mechanics of how to go and stop, she doesn't know the nuances of what to do if someone cuts her off. She needs me sitting by her to help with those things. Now, I don't have a steering wheel on my side. I am not in control in that car, but I am there as somebody to say, hey, mom, how do I do this? How do I get over all the way? Or how, right? Same with texting. So my little one, my younger one, when she first started texting, I said, all right, anytime you want to text, just come sit next to me, right? Come sit next to me so that you understand that none of this stuff is really private. And I'm here for you to help you with those nuances. If somebody says something and you're not sure how to respond, but what I'm not doing is I do not parent other people's children. That's not fair. Right? I might say to my child, hey, what that person said, I'm not comfortable with that. So I need you to make a really hard choice right now and either say to that person, hey, that's not something I'm okay with, or you need to just get off and walk away from it. Right. And so helping her decide what to do in that situation, giving her options, not necessarily telling her or controlling it, but letting her start to understand how to work with it. So, holding off a little bit and doing it with them, it's not a bad thing.
Mm, I love that. We've held off, but now our 12-year-old, yeah, it looks like she will be gifted a cell phone this holiday season. So it's really, I'm curious to know about all the monitoring and the filtering, because her dad is very, very much like, we're gonna put all of these filters, and we need to do this, and we need to do this. And I mean, I don't even know what it is. What is a monitoring? I mean, what can you?
Sure. Let me explain the difference between monitoring and filtering software
Yeah,
first.
please. Yeah.
So, filtering software is when you try and limit the type of content they are viewing, and you can also you can also look at who they can contact, and you have some other pieces with it. But it's really much more about filtering out kind of adult content, trying to get rid of porn and gambling sites and violent sites. Those usually fall under what they consider adult content. And then that's filtering. Monitoring software is getting a report after things happen of all the things they did. Right. And so I am not a huge fan of monitoring software unless listen, if your child warrants spying, spy. Do whatever you need to do. If you think your child is in real serious danger, do not let them go anywhere or do anything without you paying very close attention, because that's a whole other situation. Most of the time, that's not the situation that we are in. And so, what the monitoring software often does is it gives us kind of this idea of things that are happening out of context. It doesn't always work very well. And basically, now you're kind of doing the same thing that I never wanted my parents to do, which is while I was on the phone with a friend, if I said to them, you remember the old landlines, right? That we were on? Okay, so on my landline was connected to the phone in the kitchen too. So someone could pick up the receiver and listen in. I would never have wanted my parent to listen in on all the things without me knowing it,
Mhm.
right? It's kind of that invasion of privacy. And I do believe that there is no trust without privacy. You can't have one without the other. And so, if you want to start to build trust, there's a certain amount of privacy that they should have. Should we always know kind of who they're talking to? Yes. Should we kind of understand in the beginning how they're talking to other people? Yes. The learner's permit situation. But should we spy on them? Should we read their diaries after they've written in them? Should we listen in on the conversations all the time? Like, to me, no. And I think that, there's a book out that a lot of people are talking about called Anxious Generation. And a lot of what Jonathan Haidt talks about is kind of this idea of overparenting in the physical world and underparenting in the digital one. But this idea of spying that doesn't that's overparenting in my mind. And again, you end up also with information you don't know what to do with, right? And now are you going to go tell somebody else's you're going to look at somebody else's child and go tell that parent everything they're doing, and it gets very, very sticky. It gets very sticky. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of the monitoring software. Now, filtering software, yeah, I really do get that. And time management, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, time management is really, really hard because there's kind of this notion that that kids their attention spans are getting shorter, right, because of all of the technology they're accessing. That's not actually true. Our attention spans are not actually getting shorter. There are just more fun things to distract us. That's really what it is. And so the time management kind of software is helpful. I really think that if you're going to get your child a device, that most of the time, all these softwares are built into the device. You do not need to go get a third-party software and install it in order to do these things. You'll get a pretty good idea and a pretty good sense of what they're doing and how long they're doing it for and what kind of content they're seeing just by using whatever is built in. So with your iOS devices, that's screen time. With Android devices, I think it's actually called parental control.
Mm.
Is that helpful?
It's so helpful. It's so helpful.
I,
And I'm
I
gonna,
oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
no, it's okay. I was just gonna say, I'm gonna go back and comment on the analogy that you made with the being in the car with the child and teaching the child without actually having a steering wheel. I love that so much.
Mm,
It's so true. And we don't think about technology in that way.
yeah.
And I love that. It brings me so much uh, peace in a way. Kind of like, okay, yeah, I can do this, you know?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, we can. We
mhm.
are we are good parents. And just because we're a little bit afraid of this or just because we're a little, and sometimes the fear is that, oh my gosh, if I tell my child they can't do these things, I can't do these things. So that's another fear, right? Let's be honest about this, is that sometimes we don't want to change our own behavior. And so then we don't want to talk about the kids' behavior because, then we're fearful that we're going to be held accountable. But yes, that I understand it. I do understand it. I think that if we just kind of label it, talk about it, if we tell our kids, if we're more honest with them about, hey, I'm scared of this thing because I don't really understand it, it does. It kind of gives us a lot of peace that we are just being good parents in every realm.
So good. So
Um, I have a question for you, Lori. Lori, this is kind of a heavy hitter. Okay. So what is your opinion on, because there were some films or a film that was out not that long ago about what some of these apps are, how they're programmed to basically they're programmed for parents to not be able to see a message or not be able to see content. And they're programmed for, to sort of promote this addictive behavior. And the people that work for these companies and these developers know this. Like sometimes you often hear these developers won't even let their children use the content or the app that who they work for, right? So there was this film that was out a couple of years ago, and I feel like it really wham bam punched a lot of parents in the face with like, this stuff is taking your kids away from you. And I have to say, I watched it, but we already had rules in place when we gave my oldest kid a phone. Like he had a contract. Like I had felt like I had a handle on what I wanted my son's phone used to look like. And I felt, my husband and I, we felt pretty good about it. And I saw that film and I was like, well, everybody's going to die and cell phones are going to kill us all. And let's just burn them all to the ground. Like it just was really extreme. And it was just it came from a very strong perspective. And I'm curious as to what your perspective is on that kind of press, that kind of talk around cell phones, apps, and usage.
Yeah, I have a really hard time with the black and white thinking around this. I think I really live in the gray space, because do I think that some kids are or more easily addicted to this stuff than others? Yes, I do. A lot of it has to do with their constitution, just who they are. Some of it has to do with habits that have just been kind of shaped and formed. Honestly, when I see parents sitting at a dinner table and they hand all their kids devices and nobody's talking at the dinner table, all right, hang on a second. That is not the fault of the cell phone. That is a decision that we make as a family in that moment not to talk to each other. And so it's about all the little decisions that we make every single day. But yes, we are combating the addictive nature of these devices. So again, it's not necessarily because attention spans are getting shorter or things like that. It's just so much more interesting and so much more fun. We tend to turn to our devices for a handful of different reasons. We turn to our devices sometimes when we're uncomfortable in a situation and we just kind of want to take ourselves out of that situation. I used to do it with books when I was a kid. I was the kid that would bring a book to the dinner table and my mother would take the book out of my hands and like throw it across the room. She would get very upset with me. I actually have two kids that do the same thing. We have the same issue with books in my house that we do with cell phones. But the issue is, if I'm talking to you, do not start reading something else, right? Whether it's a text message or the next chapter. It's about these little decisions that we make each and every time we interact with one another. So, yes, what came out recently with TikTok and how they know that it only takes something like 35 minutes to addict a child to the algorithms and what they're seeing and want to stay there all the time. It's not just TikTok, by the way, that does this. They all do it. It's just TikTok is getting the most attention right now because that's where most of the people are, right? And there are some security concerns that that we seem to have. So I have no opinion on it one way or another. But what I am saying is that yes, algorithms, the way that kids are presented content through YouTube, through social media, is meant to keep them there as long as possible. The companies know that things that keep kids there as long as possible is when they feel scared or when they feel insecure or when they feel outraged or passionate about something. So it's presenting content to them that is scary, that makes them feel insecure, and that keeps them there as long as possible, right? That they're passionate about something. So yes, if we understand that's how it works, then let's make better decisions about whether or not my child is capable of using it at this point, or maybe if they're not. And then let's make all these little decisions in our household about how we use the technology and when we use the technology to kind of combat that other piece of, we should face-to-face conversations are really, really important. Smiles are contagious. Do we know this? That smiles are contagious. And yes, I can get you both to smile over the screen. I can't see, I can totally do it, but it actually has an even stronger effect in person. And so it's about us really I like doing an exercise with my families where I have the family kind of talk about, what do you value? What are the things that really matter to you? Like in my house, it's respect, responsibility, intellectual curiosity, honesty, those kinds of things. So do our habits, all of our habits, match our values? And are there times sometimes where I'm like, you know what? Your dad and I really need to have a very serious conversation about something. Can you please go watch something for a little while? Or like, there's times where you might do that and times where you might say, nope, this is face to face, no technology, we don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, like when we're in the car, unless we're on a trip, cell phones away. And why is because I found as a kid my rides silent or listening to like one radio station because we didn't even have, you know,
Right.
CD.
There was no serious radio.
There was a serious radio commitment at that time. And but I would stare out the window, right, for hours, and that's how I lived my dreams. That's how I decided what I wanted my dreams to be. And that's how I decided who I was going to be. And I don't say that necessarily to my kids, but I do say, like, when you're in the car, cell phones away, unless they have a friend in the car and we're going to baseball practice, especially my 12-year-old, like, get on the phone with your friends. It's fine. Like, we're together. It's okay. But, I don't want it to become a habit because I also want them to know where they are in space, in their neighborhood. And we always say, like, what's our exit off of the whatever? And they tell me. And that's the kind of rule that I feel like I have in my life with my kids, because I feel it's important to have face to face with nature or your location and where you are. I'm wondering, when you're talking about face to face and parents saying, don't use your cell phone or do use your cell phone, do we think that there's a fear? Because a lot of these rules are based on fears, right? Like you said, do you feel that some of the fear is fearing lack of connection with your kids or feeling
Yeah.
lack of connection with your partner? Because we all crave connection.
Yes, absolutely. I tell this story all the time. So, Laura, she is not biologically my child. She is just a child who lived with us for a period of time. And she came home from college one day and she had a bag of laundry over her shoulder and a cell phone in her hand. And she's walking through the house. She's like, "Hi, everybody. Hi, hi, hi." And seriously dropped the bag of dirty laundry in the middle of the hallway. And I got so angry and I said, "I'm so sick of that device. I'm going to throw it out the window," because she was looking down at the phone. And she put the phone down on the counter and she said, "You don't hate the phone, you just miss me, and here I am." Right? So I had to learn this from a child. And I'm glad I had that. I'm glad that happened because that really kind of sparked this whole idea for me that right time, right place, focusing on behavior over the technology, making these micro decisions about how we're going to live in the space. Like, we like to go camping. And so when we go camping, the only thing we might use the phones for is we do like music. And sometimes we'll take pictures. But my 13-year-old, if we're watching the sunset, she may say, "Hey, can I take a selfie with the sunset?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go for it." But then she puts her phone away and she watches the sunset. Right. And there's that moment. And sometimes we don't even take a device. We don't even take a picture. Sometimes we do. I love what you said, though, about when friends are in the car that you just kind of let it go. I love that because if the rules in our house are pretty consistent, right? Around the idea of when it's just us, like, no, we don't need the devices. It is a good idea to kind of put them down and think big thoughts. If you always have content coming at you, you can't do that. So you need to kind of put it down for a bit. But it's not going to destroy everything we've done as parents if they go to a friend's house and they get to use their devices more than they do in your house. Like, that's not going to destroy everything. Now, it may make your kid come home and say, "Why can't we do it the way this person does it?" All right. No, we just don't. We just don't.
So good. Yeah. And we were just looking at likability, which I have not read yet. It looks fascinating.
Okay, so I am so proud of this book. And This was probably one of the most courageous things I've ever done, because what happened was I was in a book group, I was in a book club, and we read Popular by Dr. Mitch Prinstein. And we had read Queen Bees and Wannabes, we read Popular, we were kind of going through this mom with tween girls and how do we want to approach these things and what do we need to know. And so I read Popular, and I had already written my Tech Savvy User's Guide book. And after reading it, I thought, oh my gosh, I want to adapt this for my middle school audience. Middle schoolers need to read this. They need a Tech Savvy User's Guide version for popularity. That's what it is. Likability is the science of popularity, and the two kinds of popularity, because there are two kinds. I'll get into that in a minute. But anyways, so I decided to email Dr. Prinstein. This is an author who, I mean, he is on book tours and he's like big deal stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to email him and see what happens. He responded back the same day and he said, "This is a great idea. Let's do it." And so we shopped it a little bit. Imagination Press was super interested, and he and I wrote this book together. And the courageous part, the fact that I reached out to him and said, hey, I loved what you did. Can I write with you? It was a pretty big thing for me. That's not something I normally do. But I love the book. I love how he and I wrote it together. I love the cover. I love everything about it.
Cool.
Wow. And was this your second book? So what came first?
The Tech Savvy User's Guide to the Digital World, that came first,
And
and
then
then Likability came next. And so likability, so it's the likability, the truth about popularity. It is the science of popularity. And so it talks about it really it talks about it in a scientific way, how it happens, why it happens, how people get it, who wants it. And really what it comes down to is there's two kinds of popular. There's the status seeking popular, which is what we usually think of as somebody who has a lot of status within a group or within a larger, people want to be that person. They want to know that person, kind of thing. But then there's likability, which is another kind of popularity, which a lot of people have, where they're just well liked within their peer group. Not everybody knows who they are necessarily, but they're kind of the leaders. They can also be followers. They make people feel welcome. They also feel pretty confident. It's that person you just want to be around because they're just a fun person and a kind person and a great person to be around. And what we found, and through Dr. Prinstein's extensive research, is that status seeking popularity leads to really horrible outcomes in adulthood, and likability popularity leads to fantastic outcomes in adulthood. Statistically speaking, right? There's always the outliers, but it was a really interesting way of looking at it and helping young people understand, adolescents understand power dynamics. That's where a lot of this comes in. Do you remember? I don't know if you ever had a situation with one of your kids where they came home and they said, "I need to bring candy to school tomorrow. Otherwise, this person won't let me sit next to them." Right?
Mhm.
That kind of, one day they make you feel great and the next day terrible and then great and then terrible. And that's actually a manipulator. That's not a friend. That's somebody who has recognized that if they can get you to work hard for their approval, they can get you to do anything they want. Right. And so helping kids kind of understand those things. So we made it a workbook so that they had an opportunity to kind of reflect on things that had happened or things that they want to happen. And once again, I've had lots of teenagers reach out to me and say, "I got this book as a present," or my family made me read it. I get a lot of mothers and daughters that read it together, and mothers and sons. More dads, come on board, read it with them. You'll love it. But parents reading it with the kids, and really kind of the parents learning from it too, and understanding how they can talk to their kids about these situations rather than just saying, "Oh, just ignore them," right? Ignoring doesn't work. It's how do we empower them to speak up without being mean? So that's why we wrote it, and that's what it's about.
So good. So good. I'm so excited to read this with the girls.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I love it that you go speak with the school. So I mean, you obviously speak everywhere. But I love the fact that you're going into schools, and I don't know if is that a more recent thing? Like Shelly and I had talked about how, like, there's the DARE program and there's, these kind of talks that they have at schools. But something like what you do is so unique. And when Summer came home and told me, Mom, this lady came and spoke at the school and she was telling me all these things she learned. And I was like, this is fantastic.
Aw.
Do you do it? I mean, does the schools invite you? How can we get you out there more? How can, I mean, do people
So
just contact you and say, can you come to our school? Like,
Yes, and it's kind of crazy that we're having this conversation because I'm getting ready to actually stop doing it soon.
oh,
I've been doing it for 20 years.
okay.
And so when I first started doing this back in 2004, there was no one in this space. Common Sense Media didn't even exist yet when I started. And I was working with law enforcement at the time because they were the only agency that was really talking about internet safety back in the beginning. But as the years have gone by, I mean, I've now been doing it for 20 years. There's more people in the space, there's more content around it, people understanding it. I still, though, work at probably about 120 schools a year. So I travel all over the country and I do anywhere between, depending on the year, anywhere between like 85 and I've done up to 150 schools in a year. But that's a lot for me as one person, as one person to do. So so after 20 years, yes, at the end of 2025, I will retire. And
Mm.
that I know, but there's more people in the space now, so I don't feel badly about doing it anymore. Yes, but I do. I speak at schools all the time. I do elementary schools, I do middle schools, I do high schools. The content is slightly different at each developmental age group, right? I do parent presentations. I work with faculty and staff at schools, administrators. Over the years, I've even lobbied for certain policies. I've really had an amazing opportunity to get to speak to tens of thousands of kids. And hopefully some of them heard what I said, but I love to hear that Summer told you that she learned something. The kids really do, they tend to relate to it fairly well. Now, does it stop bad things from happening? Again, no. Kids' frontal lobes not developed, reason, logic, and impulse control totally not there, right? But there's this kind of sense of empowerment that I find in communities where I speak often, where the bystanders know what to do when these things happen, that the community feels more equipped to know what to do and how to handle it. The parents feel more equipped. So that's kind of been my mission over the last 20 years. And yes, the end of 2005, that will be it for me.
Wow. I mean, you're clearly passionate about what you do, and you clearly have, it's something that you're so motivated to share and have been so motivated to share with so many people. And I love that you have a legal perspective on this, like working with law enforcement. It just seems like families, kids, teens, tweens, faculty, staff, you have just this sort of like, grand family of people that you've worked with, and I imagine that it's really enhanced your perspective on this digital world as the years go on and as you've been moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, when I first started, I was pretty terrified of it myself. But here I was going out and I was working with the FBI Safe Task Force back then. SAFE stands for Sexual Assault Federal Enforcement. At the time, they were dealing with human trafficking and then internet crimes against children. And I developed this relationship because there was nobody else going out and talking about it. And one of the agents that I started speaking with in the beginning, he was seeing the 1%, the really awful stuff that was happening. And what I started to realize was the perspective that was coming from him was terrifying because all he saw was the terrible parts of it. I, on the other hand, was a young parent. I was working at a school, at a K through 12 school. I have a master's in educational technology. So here I was, a proponent of technology for faculty to really kind of be able to do all the fabulous things they wanted to do. And so I had to be able to take all of those other perspectives into account to really kind of account for the 99% of what people were dealing with, which had to do with, time management issues and addiction issues and seeing content that was altering their brains. There is truth to how pornography is shaping the way we think about things. And I wanted to be able to talk about all of that. So yes, I really made an effort over the years to develop relationships with lots of different agencies in order to be able to kind of hone this perspective that is more nuanced than a lot of perspectives. So yes, and I've been really, really, really fortunate to do what I've done all these years. My relationship with law enforcement it has continued throughout because I'm kind of on the front lines. Kids tell me stories sometimes of things happening, and so I've maintained those relationships. So if I need to reach out, if they need help, I have those agencies to reach out to.
So unique. How beautiful the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I do love it. I do. And can I say one more thing that I haven't said yet, but I think it's important to say as a mom? The technology struggle in my house exists as well. And I think that's really important for me to say that just because I know all this information doesn't mean that I don't have a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old with opinions of their own and ideas and habits and all the things they want to do. So I never want parents to think that here I am coming at it and I've got this perfect situation. I don't. I do feel pretty equipped to say, hey, nope, we're not doing that. Or yes, we are doing that. And I feel okay about it.
It's been so comforting speaking with you this morning, Lori. Really, truly. And I mean, like I said, I was reading the book and I was learning a lot reading it. But just speaking with you has brought this really beautiful sense of comfort. Like I can do this, and that there's no perfect way.
Right.
I mean, I guess
Right.
that motherhood summed up, right?
It
Right.
is. It is.
We don't know if we did a good job until like they're, I don't know, parents themselves. Like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
all a giant experiment. And I really, if I could leave just with a couple of things, it's to say, I just really want to make sure that parents understand, lead with curiosity instead of judgment. Know that you're not going to know everything before them. It's okay when you mess up or they mess up and then you talk about it. And you want to keep those channels open because when something really big happens, you want them to know that they can come to you. They're not always going to want you to know everything, but when the big stuff happens, we want them to be able to come to us.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, you are awesome. You are
Thank
awesome. So great to have you on today. And you know, you made a comment about 20 years ago when I can't believe it's been around. This has been around for that 20 years ago seems forever ago, but in hearing you talk about all this, it is making me realize we're in this for the long haul, right? It's like, and you talk about, we don't know whether we're doing a good job until our kids are parents. We'll probably be talking to our grandchildren. We will be talking to our grandchildren about similar things, right? This is here to stay, and you've given us some wonderful guidance and thoughts and your professional and passionate opinion on this. It's so balanced, and I think kids really at the end of the day want to see their parents, they want to see their flexibility, and you have shown you walk that, and I think that it feels so nice to hear that there is flexibility. It's not black and white. There's a huge gray area, and you sit right in there. And I'm so grateful that we were able to hear you today.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Creative Mamas Unplugged is produced by Breatheasy Productions with music by Jeremy Jurin. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give my mama 5 stars and keep coming back. Thanks to us kids, there are plenty of stories to tell. And you are not alone. Bye for now.